Tony Hawkins has got a podcast. I hope he's better at this than he is washing the kit, because he was fucking useless.
Right, hello, we're back. We are back after our somewhat truncated December. This is Sit Down and We'll Steal Your Club, and I'd like to wish everyone a belated Merry Christmas. I am John, and I am as usual joined by Dan.
Hello.
And Young Alby.
Hello there, everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year and all that.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, because this will be our last episode of the year, which, quite honest with you, is tinged with a touch of sadness, isn't it, fellas?
No.
I cannot wait for 2022. Get this year out of the way.
Do you think it'll be better than this year? Because I'll be blunt with you, this one has been shit, hasn't it, really?
It's the final edition of what's going to be a dreadful trilogy. So bring it on, for all accounts.
I mean, I was thinking today when I had the dogs out, I was walking there, I was thinking if someone had said to you back in March of 2020, when it was first announced, all this bloody COVID business, that coming up in 2 years later it would be worse than it ever was, you would have called them a liar, wouldn't you? Honestly. Just fucking relentless, isn't it, this? It really is.
It's quite bizarre, John, because I listened back to an old podcast before I joined. You and Tony were doing... just as the virus was the last game that we saw live before we were kicked out into lockdown a couple of years ago, and it was when we played Doncaster at home, and the way that you guys were talking about it as if it'll be good to have a couple of weeks away sort of thing and make sure that this virus will get eased off. We still are. It's bizarre listening back to something like that. I'd implore you to go and listen. It's quite funny in hindsight listening to what we expected things to happen.
When it first started, I'd voluntarily decided I was going to have some time off work even before the furlough scheme started, and I can remember going into an office and my exact words to the guy that owns the company were, "I'm going to take a month off, mate, and come back when all this has died down a bit." Nearly 2 years later, you're thinking, oh, would you just fuck off? Honestly. Right, enough talking about shit stuff. Let's talk about good stuff. What we're going to talk about this week will be Lincoln City, because half of that was shit, but the second half was much better, wasn't it, Alby? Did you go, or did you just watch it on the telly?
Well, I was going to go until
the ticket debacle,
Alby, work on Christmas Eve.
And there was the ticket debacle, was there not? You had to buy before you went, and then in the morning of the game they were announced that you could buy on the door.
Well, thankfully I bumped into John to some degree, because he told me, "Will you fuck off, cat?"
Did he say that?
He told me that you weren't able to buy on the fireman. Well, I didn't buy. I decided not to go in the end. I did have a lift sorted and whatever, but they had tickets, so I didn't. So I didn't go. And then I just have a little nosy through Twitter in the mid-morning, early afternoon, and I see Lincoln decide to sort of say, "Oh, look, lads, we've changed our mind. If you want to come." And I'm like, "Well, fucking, we're going to get there in an hour and a half."
Well, sure, they did it right then intentionally, because there's no chance anybody outside of Lincolnshire would have got there after them saying, "Oh yeah, like it's pay on the day, like come enjoy yourself," blah 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 blah. But
they have a really
we got the final laugh.
We did have the final laugh, but they have a really strange attitude towards us. I don't know what we've done. I mean, I can't figure out why they don't like us. I know we're not very popular in the footballing world, but they seem to have a specific dislike for us, don't they? I mean, I can't figure that out. Maybe we've, wronged them in a previous life or something. I really don't know. But like you say, who had the last laugh yet? It was us, They couldn't even be, scored their own goals, to be quite honest. I was genuinely quite surprised at how poor they were. Because, this time last year they were flying, weren't they? Flirting with playoffs. They were... what a fall from grace that's been from them, wasn't it? And they were just... McCrandall's I thought was poor. And Sorensen, obviously, you pay special attention to them, don't you? Because, we know them. But I thought Sorensen especially was just... When he came on, I just thought to myself, wow, what's happened to you? Is it them? Or... I don't know. Is it their coaching? They were just... I know you didn't watch the whole match, Dan, but, even from the off, you're just thinking, you guys are just not very good here. They weren't very good at all, They were surprisingly poor for a team who have been all right up until, a couple of days ago.
Something worth mentioning is approaching half time, Toby said on the and the other commentator, I can't remember who it was, said on the radio commentary that there was a real nervous energy inside the ground, despite the fact they were 2-0 up, as if they could sense the energy in the room. Our commentators, like the home fans, suspected that it wasn't quite over yet. And to me, I'm never, despite being 2-0 down, you can never be too sure, because although we very rarely come back, we've seen before 2 goals really can, it's not that big a gap if you're still in the game and you're playing fairly well. And I didn't think we're as bad as a lot of people thought. So the fact there was a nervous energy around the ground, to me, sensed that the Lincoln fans were expecting a bit of an onslaught. And as soon as we got that first goal, it sounded like there was that nervous energy in that ground continued to go. So perhaps we capitalised on that.
There was a stat from, so as you said, John, I didn't actually watch the full game. I was busy doing other things, but I watched the extended highlights literally just before coming on today. And the commentator on there said a stat which makes total sense as to why even at 2-0 up they were still they weren't comfortable. They haven't won at home since August 14th.
Jesus, really? Wow.
So that was over 4 months and they haven't won at home. So yeah, they've been on a bit of a bad run, mainly I think because their better players last year were loans. There's that what's his name? I think it was it Brennan Johnson or something Brennan like that.
Johnson.
That's gone yeah, he's gone back to Forest and he's actually doing fairly well. And there was one or two other ones. And then I'm sure Michael Appleton was in hospital at some point, or there was something wrong with either him or his family or something, which might have affected them at some point during the transfer window or just afterwards. So there's bits and pieces. They're not the same team that they were last year, which I think is why us going 2-0 down in the manner that we did was even more disappointed, just as I was just sort of following it from the Twitter.
I mean, the first goal, those kind of things are going to happen all the time, aren't they? I mean, that was just an unfortunate. If it had gone, 2 or 3 feet, to the right, then you would have been thinking, oh, well done for getting involved, mate. But the second goal, that is completely inexcusable. There's no excuse for what that lad did. Picking the ball up, because you think you should have a foul. I mean, that is ridiculous. But to do it in the penalty box, I mean, I was cross. I'll say that. I was slightly miffed, to say the least, when I thought, you're fucking joking, mate. But, I don't know what you guys think about that. I think he's all right. I've got nothing against him. I don't think he's he's not spectacular, is he? He's a good enough player, but that's just, that was naivety, wasn't it? Really, it really was.
There was only one player on the pitch that would have done that, and it was him. As you just alluded to, the own goal was it was very unlucky at the pace that the ball came through, and any other time that he tries to do that, it probably gets cut out or goes back to the keeper or whatever. With a moment like what Dan Harvie had, I'm sorry, I found it quite comical, which is bizarre to say when you're just about to go 2-0 down, but it really was one of those, I so can't believe it just happened, that you're either going to get really frustrated at something so silly or you can laugh. And I did find it quite comical. Perhaps if we had lost the game by a goal, another couple of goals, I might have been a bit more pissed off about it, but it was just absolutely bizarre. And as I said, there was only one person who really would have done that, and it was Dan Harvie.
Looking back, it's probably the best sort of game to do that in, which, again, sounds mad saying it because that led us to go 2-0 down. But considering we won, that didn't cost us any points. So he can do that there. He can know, right, next time, no matter if I think it's a foul, just don't pick the ball up in the box. And then again, we might not lose points going forward. But yeah, no, as you were saying, being detached from it and only watching sort of the highlight as I'm out and about doing something else, it is probably one of the funniest things I've seen on a football pitch in a long time.
It's funny in retrospect because of the final score, but if they had a run out, I don't know, let's just say 2-1 winners, it wouldn't have been amusing at all, would it, to be quite honest? It would have been quite unamusing. But ultimately, it was a silly mistake. I'm going to say a ridiculous football cliche, but you genuinely hope that he'll learn from that. But, it's just think to yourself, you're a professional footballer, mate. See that guy in the fluorescent pink top behind you with that whistle. See when he blows that whistle, then you can do that, but not until he does it. But I don't know. I mean, these things happen in the blink of an eye, don't you? It's all right for us to sit here, 2 or 3 days, after the event, having watched it, back and just think, but it was... I mean, it was quite funny, I guess, but it wasn't particularly amusing at the time, was it? But
yeah, it's probably not worth sticking on this too long because we did win the game. But having said that, I will stick on it just a little bit longer because with a thing like that, you say you hope that he learns from it, but this goes right down to junior level football. Is a footballer knows not to touch a ball with their fucking hands, hence why it's called football. And in that situation, I'm wondering what crosses his mind because if it had accidentally hit his hand, for one, or he accidentally, knocked it with his arm when he went down, then you could probably look at the referee. But it's the fact that he's picked it up as if... So what goes on in the player's mind in that situation? Did he hear a whistle? Did he think he heard a whistle? Did he... I don't know. But he's in that situation in the penalty box. There's no excuse to do something like that. But again, we won, but it was a goal that put them 2-0 up. And thank Christ they're shit, because... if that was a game against a top 6 team or whatever, they could have run out with that and our heads could have gone. So thankfully it didn't.
That's a good point to say about heads going, because it says a lot for the management team, who we're going to talk about later on, that they could, get them in at half time. And the difference in performance between the first and second half was quite astonishing. I mean, we were all right in the first half. Like, a couple of stupid mistakes gave them goals, but the second half was a completely different proposition. I wouldn't say we were outstanding because they were pretty poor. And it's another football cliche, you can only play against what's in front of you sort of thing. But, we came out in the second half like Scott Twine, we might as well just talk about him now. He is just an outstanding player. Do you think he'll be here by the end of January? Genuinely?
Yeah.
You genuinely do? Yeah, honestly. I'd like to think so.
I'll get on to why I think that a little bit more when we actually talk about the transfer window, which I think we're going to do in a little bit. But yeah, of the few players that I think will be looked at, Twine is one of those where I'm a little bit more confident that we'll keep him rather than sell him. Yeah, I'm the same. I can't see in any world where, despite the fact that we might get good money for him, and Dan, you'll be able to tell me out, we signed him on a free, right? I'll get onto that a little bit more when we actually talk about the transfer window. But we got him on a free transfer, but because of his age, we've had to pay compensation to Swindon. Of course. So if we can get money for him in the summer, once he's had a full complete season, then fantastic. But it would be transfer suicide if we gave a player like that away. Of course, you can't stand in players' way, and if let's just throw one out there. A Premier League team came in for him and offered us great money, of course, but I can't see any team being so desperate for Scott Twine in such a higher level that they're willing to pay X amounts of money in January, and I can't see any team in the Football League offering what we would require mid-season. So I can't see that happening. I can see a couple of departures, but again, as Dan said, we'll talk a bit more about that later. But to answer your question, no, I can't see him going in January.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that, because I genuinely would be amazed if he's here, at the beginning of February. I'm just hoping that the likes of, I don't know, let's just say Ipswich or something like that come in for him, and we just turn around and say, no, you're not having him, like Ipswich or, I don't know, Wednesday or something like that, one of the inverted commas bigger teams in this league, and we just turn around and hold our nerve this time. I really hope that's what happens, The thing as well was that we spoke, I think maybe it's we've been burned in the past by losing players to the point where when January comes around, we almost become accustomed to losing them. But what you've got to remember is a lot of the players that we've had who are in form have always been, generally been loanees. I can't think of too many players that have left us in January and, not returned. So players like Delhi, for example, who have performed so well throughout the season and then left in January. We lost the likes of Benicophobe, and we lost Patrick Bamford, yeah,
and players like that. But I can't think of too many players who have been quite literally one of the better players in the league when they've been playing for us who have left in the January window. I think it would be devastating if we lost him. I really do. But again, I can't see it happening. But he was tremendous the other day, as he always is. I'm running out of superlatives to describe the guy. He's absolutely mustard. His goal was just, it was a thing of beauty. It really was, wasn't it? It was a cracking goal. It really was, wasn't it? Fantastic.
Both of them were. So the first one, I want to give a bit of credit to Isa actually for the first one. Because if it's intentional, that is an absolutely astounding dummy from him to set Scott Twine free. If it wasn't intentional, then I don't know, everything that everybody else is saying about Mo Isa might actually be true, but like he just sort of lets it go either under his leg or like through his legs. He completely sort of takes the defender out of the game, and then Scott Twine's there free on goal to just slot it home first time. And then he's gone and wound up their captain just afterwards and booked their captain. So it's the first goal was it was brilliant. I can't really say anything else about it. It was wonderful to watch.
Might have been lucky to stay in the picture. Might have been lucky to stay in the picture with that. It was on a yellow, and there was a bit of fisticuffs and not fisticuffs, but a little bit of crap handbags. And if one player was going to get booked, and 90% of the time I've seen them sort of incidents both get booked for being, for being unsportsmanlike or whatever. So he might have been lucky to got away with that one. I'm not complaining, but generally speaking, I've seen that happen.
Did the extended highlights show you Lewington and that other bloke, Dan?
It didn't, but I got sent that video from a mate, and that was
absolutely
exceptional,
hilarious. Did you see Louis' face? Like I said to my lad, look, he's going to burst out laughing in a minute. That's exactly what he did. I said, that is just so funny. You're not going to get Lewington in something like that, are you? A player with how many games has he played? You just think, grow up. I mean, that guy's rolling about on the floor, isn't he, as if he'd been run over by a steamroller, and quite literally. Louis sort of laughs and looks at him, and the guy jumps up. You think, wow, it's a miracle. What a revelation that is. You just think it was so funny. That was the highlight of the game. Well, apart from the last goal, when the last goal went in, our living room erupted, but Lewington and that bloke, that was just hilarious. It really was. It was a fantastic thing to see. His face, he just looks at the guy and does that smile and shakes his head a little bit, and the bloke jumps up ready to batter him, and Lewington just looks at him and walks away. It was really, really funny. It was brilliant.
Alby's just gone.
I think Alby's disappeared. He's probably going to the toilet again. He'll be back in a minute. We'll just carry on regardless. Anyway.
The second Twine goal, actually, as well, is probably worth mentioning. It was a deflection, John. Do you know who it came off of?
I have no idea.
It was, you were just mentioning some ex-Dons players that they've got in, was it McGrandles and Sorinola? You didn't mention Regan Poole, who was the defender that it came off his chest.
Come off Regan Poole as well?
As far as I could see.
That. See what I mean? They can't even score. We were having to score all their goals for them, to be quite honest. And then they've decided to score one for us. I didn't realise it was a deflection off of him. I really didn't. Alby's back. You're back, Alby, I see.
Yeah, all of my internet's dropped, so I'm on my data, so if I drop out again, then I'll apologise. The point I was just about to make was, because we didn't do a pod over the spell where we had 2 home games against Oxford and Plymouth, I was really, really despondent with both of those 2 games, to the point where I couldn't wait to get on here and have a vent. I'm glad, to some degree, that didn't come around, because I might have said things that, in hindsight, I regret, because a couple of weeks is a long time in football. But what I was going to touch on in both of those games was how, and we won't touch on it too much because it's been and gone, but both of those games against Plymouth and Oxford, pretty good first halves. But I said to Dan in the bar at half time against Oxford that I was so nervous for the second half, given what I saw in the week against Plymouth, that I wasn't getting excited about being a goal up. And this was a bit of a, this almost counters that. We were pretty shit in the opening stages of the first half. We got back into the game later in the first half, of course, but we were 2-0 down. And in the second half, we came out like a steam train. And that's what I want to see us do. I want to see us have that about us for 90 minutes where we can put teams to bed. And, imagine we came out of the ropes and conceded 2 goals after 10 minutes. We could have put Lincoln to bed, 3-0 maybe, instead of winning 3-2 and having to come from behind. Because the fact that we're in that situation anyway, for all brilliance it is to experience coming from 2-0 down to win an away game, it's worrying, but also to another degree it reaffirms to me that we have got a real fighting spirit in this camp after what I saw beforehand.
In retrospect, what happened with the Oxford game I'm finding really, really irritating, because how many first team players did we have? Was it 4 or 5 first team players for that? COVID related, and now the amount of games that are being cancelled because they can't fill they can't fill the bench. You just think, all right, I mean, we can't go back 2 or 3 weeks and change that, but it's so irritating. I mean, when you look back on that, it really is. I mean, and it's against Robo. I mean, I've nothing against Robo. I think he's a smashing bloke, but I mean, he's come back here, and I didn't want him to win, basically, to be quite honest, but he has done. I don't know if he's gone again. Is he gone, Dan, or what? I'm not sure.
I'm here. I thought Dan was going to chirp in. Yeah, as I say, it's probably not worth touching on those games because it's been and gone, and it's been a real number of weeks now. But I still do have a real nervousness on how we can control games for 90 minutes, and I don't want to see us come out in second halves or first halves or however long it is and turn it on, when I think quite literally we can control games. I wonder whether the players are trusted to try and control a game for 90 minutes off late. I don't know, with the injuries and suspension, whatever we've had. But it seems to have crept in maybe the past 6 to 8 weeks where we just seem to be laying off it a little bit, where we could be putting teams to bed, and I'm not a fan of that. I can't take anything away from what the management or the players did the other day, because I thought the way that he turned it around was absolutely brilliant. And I put a thread up on the forum saying, when was the last time we were 2-0 down or 2 goals down and came back to win a game? It's years ago. We're talking literally 5-6 years ago since that had happened. So it's definitely got to be credited, especially against a team like Lincoln, who have been a bit of a bogey team for us over the years. So it definitely goes, it can't go without merit, you know what I mean?
Right, shall we wrap Lincoln up then and move on to Liam Manning? Because obviously, unless you've anything else to say about Lincoln, anything else to say about that? Apart from, where was your massive banner putting us to the sword, you wankers? Apart from that, I don't even see that banner. I mean, I would have had that banner out if it had been me, because those things are not cheap to buy. You'd be wanting to get your money's worth. You're only going to use it once a season, aren't you? So, what can you say? Anyway, they didn't have it. We put them to the sword. We're better than them. Fuck them.
Well, full credit to the people who do the media team. Because, they alluded to that in a very sly way, if anybody's seen it. So,
and there was another thing. Apparently, they were singing "We Get Battered Everywhere We Go," weren't they? So they even put that on one of their tweets, didn't they? Milton Keynes getting battered everywhere we go, or something like that. So, yeah, fuck them. Like I said at the beginning of this, I don't know what we've done to upset them, but we certainly.
I'm probably one of the only Dons fans that actually likes Lincoln, because it's where I was for uni. They paid me to sell programs there for a little while. But even I was laughing a lot when I was listening back to when I was watching the highlights, and you can hear them just singing "Franchise Get Battered." And I think it's the first goal, but it just stops as soon as we score. And then I take it, again, I wasn't there, I don't know, we were singing that back to them when we got either our second or our third or something. And it's brilliant from the fans, brilliant from the media team.
The media team have been very good this year. I mean, they've had their criticism, but I mean, they've been very, very funny. They really have, which is, I think, quite a lot of people take that shit the wrong way, don't they? But I'm all for that kind of stuff. I mean, that time, about a couple of months ago, when they had that trouble with the shirts in the bar, the first thing they did on Saturday morning, they put a tweet out saying, "Don't forget to go to Lewington's bar." I just thought, that is brilliant. I mean, that is just absolutely hilarious. It really was. I loved that. Right, we're moving on.
They're fans, aren't they? They're fans.
Yeah, they are. I mean, that makes a massive difference.
They get it. They get it from our level, but then they also know the things from higher above, that things they can say, things they can't say. So yeah,
they've always been pretty good to us as a podcast, I must admit. So I like them. I like whatever his name is. I think he's a decent bloke. He is a fan of the club, and to do that was just hilarious. Right, we're moving on to Liam Manning now. I don't care what anyone says, you would have to be some real footballing nerd with the sort of lifestyle of Ross Gallagher to have ever heard of him before he rocked up. I mean, I don't care what anyone says, no one has heard of him before he arrived here. No one. Did you hear of him, Dan?
The first time I heard of him was when I was searching through, as I tend to do on Twitter, just search MK Dons during the transfer window, just to see if there's any sort of rumours from these sites that nobody really knows, and then they'll get picked up a bit later. And the first thing I heard of Liam Manning was somebody that turns out to be a betting insider ask, I think it was either Sky Bet or Paddy Power or someone like that, the odds on Liam Manning to MK Dons. That was the first I'd ever heard of him.
So how do you think he's done then? I mean, you got to give the caveat of what happened on his arrival, because, I mean, we will speak about that, obviously, in a couple of minutes, but given the circumstances of him arriving here, I think he's done remarkably well. He really has. I mean, he's done outstanding, because none of these players are his, are they, to be quite honest?
The only one that's come in after he got here was Kioso, who was basically already on our radar from a young age because he was our youth player. So yeah, January will be interesting for him, I think. But overall, I'd say he's done decently. I'm still not entirely convinced that the team has it in them to beat other teams when they simply sit back and like they absorb pressure and they don't really give us a chance in the final third. But then on the other hand, he's given us some really, really excellent moments already. Like, imagine being in the ground on Boxing Day, or like going to see one of the 74 4-1 wins that we've had away from home this year. We have had some really, really good moments, but then it's still early. We've still got the odd, I don't know, dodgy few games in us. And it's something that sort of Alby was alluding to a little bit earlier, but we do only tend to have one good half per game. Sometimes it works out in our favour, as it did at Lincoln. But then, on the other hand, you've got the Oxfords, as we've already mentioned. So if we can cut that out and if we can be consistent over both halves, or even if we can stretch that to like a good 60 minutes or 70 minutes or something like that, then I don't know. But it's still early days. It's only his second managerial role, but it's probably the first with the amount of scrutiny that he's going to get being in England, whether that's sort of bigging us up more and being sort of a bit disrespectful to Belgium, I don't really know. But yeah, it's been decent. It could be better, I think, is probably how I'm going to sort of conclude it.
My biggest problem with him is sort of what Alby was talking about 2 or 3 minutes ago with the sitting back, like sort of once we go ahead, that is because I think we've actually got it in us to go and beat these teams. This sitting back business, inviting clubs on, that is a big mistake, obviously, because it's been proven to be 2 or 3 times this season so far. Apart from that, if I was giving points out, I'd give him 7 out of 10 so far. I think that's a fair summation of what he's done, really. I think 7 out of 10, which is 70%, I would say that's alright. He's turned out better than I thought he was going to do it. I mean, obviously, with the caveat I've just said a minute ago that I'd never heard of him, but I think he's done alright. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt because of the way he was brought in, because, no one's seen that coming. Never in a million years could you have ever imagined that was going to happen. Not even in the day before it actually did happen did you think it was going to happen. So to come in under those circumstances and play the football's been entertaining. He's entertained me. He has. I quite like going to football anyway, but to go to football and see us play the way we have been, yeah, I'm more than happy with him, I really am. Who knows what would have happened if the other guy had stayed? You never know, do you? But, it's just, I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it more this season, obviously, because I can go. Last season you're watching it on the telly and it was difficult to, you don't get the same experience. You can't see what's happening off the ball, can you, when you're watching it on the telly? So, yeah, I'm more than happy with him, to be quite honest. I really am. What do you think, Alby?
This is why I'm kind of glad that we, in hindsight, didn't do a pod after. But I'm gonna stick to my stick to my principles, and I'm gonna say what I would have said in response to those games to a degree. I've got worries about Liam Manning, but each worry is counterbalanced by things I'm impressed by. So I'm a bit unsure. But the problem is that when you say things like this, you quickly have people saying you've never liked him, you're this, you're that, you don't want him as a manager, you think he's crap. I actually don't. I think Liam Manning is actually, if you had offered me the day that we were sat in a pub in Bournemouth on the opening game of the season to be the situation that we are in right now, I would have bitten your fucking hand off. So actually, context behind everything, I think he's done a wonderful job. Having said that, there are small little things, almost so small that you can't quite talk about them in depth, that I'm worried about will come to a head the longer that he's in charge, and the longer that, over time when he brings his own players in a similar sense, and don't jump down my throat because I'm not saying it's going to go that way, but in a similar sense to what happened when Nielson first took over. He carried on a lot of the good work and what was working under Robbo when Robbo got sacked, and what was working. And then as soon as the summer hit, he said, I don't want him, I don't want him, I don't want him. And he brought in a load of shit. And the bad things that we had seen under Nielson, such as there were certain games where for some reason he just went into them where we could have Port Vale away, we drew 1-1 or 0-0, whatever it was, and we could have absolutely battered them on paper because they were rubbish, and he just settled for a draw. And we lost 2-0 to AFC, and the players didn't put up a fight. There were small little doubts that we had as a fan base around that time, and it all came to a head in his first full season. And I worry that some of the things like sitting back when we're a goal up, or not burying a team when we really have the chance to. And I do have this big worry that he doesn't quite trust his team to be as expansive as they perhaps could be, which is why I think that for all of an arsehole he is, Russell Martin probably would have had us, fourth or fifth by now. And that's actually, in a backhanded compliment kind of way, credit to Liam Manning, because he's come in, figured this team out really quickly and got them to a point where they're in and around the playoffs when it could have quite easily gone down south. So a bit of both, really. I would say probably 6.5 out of 10. I've got a lot of worries, but I'm also got plenty of things to get excited about, so it could go one way or the other.
Do you think, speaking about Robbo then, that if Manning was to bring an older head in as an assistant, that would benefit him? The way Robbo always seemed to have someone that was a bit more experienced than him behind him.
It's an interesting point, because there's actually something I spoke about in the car on the way back home with my dad after the Oxford game. Who knows? I'm not a coach. I'm not involved in football. I don't know how these things go. And Luke Williams, or whatever his name was hardly the oldest fella in the world, and he was really helpful to Russell Martin. But of course, having an older head there who's been there and done it could perhaps be helpful. And the fact that Liam hasn't managed to, or been a head coach in the Football League before, having somebody like what Robbo did when he had Gary Waddock and Mick Harford and John Gorman, people like that around who have been there and done it, might help him. But if he feels like he can continue his philosophy without an older head to help him, and he trusts his own ability, then more power to him. I don't quite know if that would make as big a difference, but it would be interesting to see, with the benefit of, parallel universe, how that could have worked out.
It will certainly be interesting to see what happens in this transfer window. It really will. More incomings and outgoings, in my opinion, to see what sort of player he'll bring in. But, we're just speculating at the end of, it's only a couple of days before the year ends as we're recording this. So, when does the window open? Is it on the Monday?
It's just January the 1st.
Is that when it opens? Right, I have no idea really, because it's all over the place at the minute. I'll have to see what happens. I mean, I don't really know where we could strengthen, because you'd be looking at more at the players that would leave, and hopefully he can bring someone into, So we'll talk about the transfer window now, then we might as well. I mean, who do you think will go? There's an awful lot of rumours that Fisher's going to go to Swansea. I think that's more or less, everyone's saying that's a done thing already,
I've sort of had a tentative look at the squad, and I've got an idea of probably what I think might happen.
Lewington, he's gone, isn't he? Definitely, get rid of him, I'd say. He's too old and too... Lewington, he can't run, he's fat and he's slow.
He should have gone about 20 years ago, John. But the loanees, I fully expect Max Waters to be recalled. I cannot see him even being there on New Year's Day, if I'm honest, even if he is injured. I'm less sure about Parrott now than I was, but I'm not going to be as disappointed, I don't think, if he goes as I would be for Waters. The other ones, I probably expect them to stay, but if we're going to if we ourselves are going to let one of them go, I'd expect that to be Josh Martin.
You don't think he also will go? Because every time when I'm coming back after watching a game on Three Counties, all you've got is a whole load of Luton supporters tweeting into Luke Ashmead saying, we're really struggling, we've got a great player, sort of 20 miles up the M1, he should be back here. I don't know. I mean Luton supporters are all wankers, aren't they? So they can say what they like, but I mean, he's a good player. I mean, he's not our best player, obviously, but he's a very, very good player. So I was surprised when he came here, given their animosity towards us, so I can only assume that... I mean, I genuinely don't know. I mean, I'm surprised he's here, I've got to be honest. I really, really am. So I could see him going back. I mean, I'd be surprised.
The only reason I think that would happen is if Luton want to spite us, because I don't think they've got... I think his name's James Bree or something, but they've got a right back that's better than him.
Right.
So I think it'd only be to spite us. But
there could also be a thing where a team out there is ready to put money on the table and say, we're going to sign him, we'll sign him now. He's out of contract in the summer, so perhaps Luton could recall him to sell him on to somebody else. They'd probably rather send somebody else than sell him to us, so that'd be interesting. But yeah, to spite us, probably, but if they can make money out of it, then most definitely.
I mean, he's championship quality, him, he is. He's lower, mid to lower championship quality, but he is championship quality. It's a point I've not really considered, actually, that, Luton might want to sell him to someone else, to be quite honest. I've not even considered that, so that's kind of scuppered my, my expectations, really. So that is what it is. Who else have we got then, Dan?
So, having a quick look at the squad, I've sort of thought of 5 of our players that I think will be they'll be being looked at pretty intimately. Fisher, I think, like we already know that he's basically off apparently. Harry Darling.
Really?
David Kasumu.
Yeah.
Scott Twine and Matt O'Reilly. And of those 5, this might sound very, very strange, but the 2 that I'm most worried about leaving right now are Matt O'Reilly and Fisher.
Really? I'm surprised at that, because the 2 that I would be...
I'll go into why, because I know it's a bit of a strange one, because I've not mentioned Twine, obviously. But Fisher, even though he is probably going, as it stands right now, he's our only first-team quality keeper.
Yeah, we don't.
So if he goes right now, for New Year, we've got either Laurie Walker or Franco, whatever his surname is. So while I'm sort of resigned to leaving, we need to keep him until we have somebody in place that is either as good or, I'd say, better than him.
Do you not think, Dan, that having this talk about Fisher leaving has been in and around the Twitter sphere for about 6 weeks? Do you not think that that's enough time that they possibly could have already lined up a replacement?
Probably, but I just don't want him to leave until we've got somebody already signed. That's my thing, because we could have been talking for 6 weeks to somebody, get to the transfer window, we let Fisher go, and then all of a sudden Ipswich come in because they need a new goalkeeper.
But I don't think that would happen with a position like a goalkeeper, because when you've got a striker or whatever, and you've got 3 other players who can fill a role, or a midfielder, etc. With a goalkeeper, I think, for all that you might trust them, or you trust them to do a job when they're relied upon, I think everybody at the club is fully aware that the 2 goalkeepers that we have aren't good enough to step in for, unless it's injury or whatever. I don't see a world in which we'd let Andrew Fisher go, even in our nicey stage, when we've been that way, where we don't want to stand in anybody's way for whatever. I don't see any time that we'd let Andrew Fisher go until we had somebody replaced, somebody absolutely nailed on to come in.
The talk is that he's going to go to Swansea. What do you reckon to that?
As long as the Swansea tax is added, then I'm absolutely happy with that.
Yeah, I mean,
I
would be, if it was me, and I'm not, I don't know who deals with the transfers at Milton Keynes, I've no idea, but we'll just say Pete Winkleman, because he does everything there. If it was me, I wouldn't even entertain dealing with them. I just point blank wouldn't even... I mean, I would just say no. Or like you, Dan, I would say, yeah, he is, but you can add another 20% onto the price, and we're not negotiating. In fact, if you come back and negotiate, we're going to bump it up to 30%. So just keep going, and before you know where you are, it'll be 50%. That's what I would say to them. I mean, really, I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. I just wouldn't, because it's not only the Snake's fault that he's gone there, it's Swansea's fault, for doing it to us in the first place, isn't it, really? So, I would say no to that. But, money talks, and I dare say they've got a lot more money than we have. So, I mean, if they come in with a decent offer, we are definitely going to accept it, aren't we, I guess? And if he wants to go, if he wants to go and play at a higher level, you can't really, to use one of Pete's, catchphrases, we can't really stand in his way, can we, I guess? But I'll be pissed off if he goes. I'd be pissed off if any of our players end up going there. I really will.
I'd like to make a point to the floor, and I've had this conversation with a few people recently, and I've almost given up responding to people who have made this point because I keep repeating myself. So it'd be interesting to hear your point of view. A lot of people seem to think that half of our team are going to go to Swansea.
They can't afford half of our team.
Right. But, hear me out, and let's just say they can. Let's just say they can. Kasumu, O'Reilly, Fisher, Darling. Let's just say there's four players right there. Firstly, can you see a world in which MK Dons would let 4 of their key players go to Swansea City? 2, why do people think that just because Russell Martin has worked with him before, he necessarily wants him again? You've got to consider that he's working in a higher paid job which will be able to attract a better pool of players. Why would he then suddenly go and grab 4 or 5 players from a League One club just because he's worked with them before? We've seen it happen. Of course, we've seen it happen where managers go and take players that they've trusted, that they've worked with before. But very rarely do you see them go and plant a siege on their former club because they want half of their players. Then why the fuck would he leave? Why would he leave and go to Swansea and then bring half his team with it? That completely, to me, does it not devalue the whole point as to why he started another project?
I like Harvey Darling, and I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's championship good. I'll be honest with you, and I'm surprised that they've gone for. Well, I mean, I've said they've gone for Fisher. We're just assuming he's going to go there, but I don't think any of our players are good enough, to be quite honest, to go up at the minute. I mean, I'm just, I could be wrong. I mean, I really don't. I don't know what to say. I don't think Darling's good enough. I genuinely don't think Fisher's good enough because he's a bit erratic. I mean, he needs, I don't know, perhaps if he goes up, he can be coached better and he can get all that stupid, nonsense out of his system. I don't know what to say, but I genuinely don't think Harvey Darling's good enough to make a step up. I really don't. He's good at our level. He's exceptionally good, but he's like the Norwich of League One, really good in the Championship, shit in the Premiership. That's what he is. I mean, I think it just does.
In defence of Andrew Fisher, and we've touched on it a couple of times actually on the pod talking about it, if he were to go to Swansea, he'd probably have a better half a season there than he's had here. And I don't actually think he's been that bad. And yeah, he made a mistake for the Oxford goal and things like that. But he's also playing completely differently to how we saw him play last year. He was almost playing, if you remember, he was almost playing as a defender. He was almost playing as like that fourth centre back of the 3, and he was getting so much more involved in the game. Whereas under Liam Manning, he's changed it slightly to the point where he's kicking along a lot of the time, and he can't kick the ball very well, a lot of the time. I think going to Swansea where they're playing, and I've watched a couple of their highlights just out of real crude curiosity. They play very similar to how they played with us, but their goalkeeper's absolutely shit. So he's not fit to play their style, and ours, I don't know whether is fit to play the style Liam wants. So perhaps it could work out for both parties in a sense. But I mean, I like Andrew Fisher. I think he's a brilliant goalkeeper, and I almost wish it would play to his strengths a little bit more. But it'd be interesting to see if he goes there, to see how he'd handle it, playing at a faster pace and having players close him down quicker if the ball was at his feet.
There are certain players that that make the move up, and you just think, gee, I didn't see that coming. But I mean, that's why I'm sitting here on a Wednesday night just at the end of the year talking into a computer screen, because I'm not a football, tactician or manager, but I genuinely can't see him. I mean, I don't know what to say. I just don't. I mean, I'm saying it because I want the guy to stay, obviously. So if you're listening to this, Russell Martin, A, you can fuck off, and B, he's not good enough to go to Swansea. So there you go.
And so, just before we move on, we were just talking there about goalkeepers. Last year, we were blessed with the luxury, which we're not blessed with now, as having 2 first-team quality goalkeepers who, at the time, we were talking could arguably play in a championship. Our second-choice goalkeeper is currently in the championship playoffs.
I did think that, Albie. That did cross my mind.
Sorry, go on.
No, that did cross my mind when I was saying all that stuff about Fisher not being good enough. I thought to myself, yeah, the other guy's going to, going up to Championship and has done really, really well. So that shows you, like I said a minute ago, what I know, i.e. fucking nothing.
So it would be interesting, but as we touched on earlier about Scott Twine, I can see Fisher going. I've got to be honest, I can't see Darling going. I can't see Kasumu going. I don't think he's played enough football recently to warrant the sort of fee that we'd asked for him. Dan said that Waters will probably go. I probably agree with that, to be honest, but I really don't have any doubts that we'll be ready to bring somebody else in whatever position. And the reason why I'm saying this is because it's been proven, even with the manager, Liam Sweeten's done a very good job in replacing the players that we've lost. We lost Richard Keogh last year and replaced him better with Harry Darling. We lost Russell Martin and we've replaced him with Liam Manning. It's worked all over the field. We lost Andrew Cullen, we replaced him with Liam Sweeten. I think whatever happens, I'm behind the club and I trust him. So let's just see what happens, I guess.
And that is the exact reason why earlier I said I'm not going to be worried about losing Scott Twine. Because in the unlikely chance that it happens, he's going to get a lot of interest. Let's not beat about the bush there. We signed him on a long-term contract in the summer, which to me means 3 years or more.
You guys talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to get another beer. It'll be 2 minutes. So don't talk about me behind my back when I'm not here. I'll be listening.
He's on a long-term contract. So to me, that says 3 years or more. We've just supposedly, according to some Swindon fans online, paid £400,000 in compensation for him. So if he does go, with the length of contract he's on, with how well he's doing, if he goes, it's going to be for a hell of a lot of money. So I'm not too worried, because I reckon with that we'd be able to replace him quite easily.
It all depends as to whether we put all that money directly into a transfer to get another player away, prize a player away from their club in January. But having said that, we got the likes of Harry Darling last year and Josh McEachran, although he was a free agent, of course, later on down there towards the end of the season. But I do really trust it, because it's not like when we signed Scott Twine, we were signing a player who had the level of attention that he's got now since he's been with us. We were signing a player with a lot of quality, but he'd not been that long loaned out to another team in League Two. I think it was Newport County. So he's come here and he's excelled and he's done incredibly well. But I think our scouting system has just gone up another level over maybe the past 20 months or so, because everybody that we've brought in, by a few that haven't really affected us if they haven't quite worked out, have been brilliant. So, yeah, of course I don't want to lose Scott Twine, but let's just, for exaggeration purposes, let's just say Aston Villa came in for Scott Twine and gave us £2 million. Who wouldn't take that? It'd be a silly thing to say. You couldn't stand in his way.
I know you say that, but there was an interesting thread on the same forum that I've just mentioned where I got the compensation figure. Looking at some of the players that have gone from League One up for a lot of money, Ivan Toney was one of them. He, like Scott Twine's had quite he's had a very good first half of the season. So I think going back to we've had Ivan Toney. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain had a very, very good sort of League One season when he was down here. He then went to Arsenal for 12 million. Dele Alli, he'd been with us a little longer. He did have a bit more interest, but he left in January as well for 5 million. So I'm thinking, like you're saying, who wouldn't accept 2 million? As of right now, if he's on the length of the contract that I think he is, with the amount that we've paid compensation-wise, I genuinely think we could be trying to be pushing for Dele Alli money, if not higher.
Hey, while you're there, we might not stay in this too long because we've got other things that we want to talk about. Right, it might sound a bit of an exaggeration, but just remember about inflation and the fact that it has been 5-6 years since Dele went. I put a thing up on Twitter recently, and next to nobody disagreed, and I only said it as half a bit of bait. If Dele Alli was worth only 5 million in January 2015, which he wasn't, we all agreed that he was worth more, but we obviously couldn't get that amount of money. If Dele Alli was worth £5 million in January 2015, Scott Twine's worth £15 million in January 2022.
maybe not 15, but I definitely think he's worth at least Deli money. And like bearing in mind that was in our sort of pushover stages as well with when it came to transfers, and we're not that same beast. But yeah, I definitely reckon mid to high 7 figures. I reckon if somebody comes in for that in January for Scott Twine, I don't think that'll be. I think that'd be decent. I wouldn't sell him for anything less.
Yeah, I agree with that.
If it was up to me, I would be thinking his value is around about 7 million. I don't know if you guys have already said that, because I've gone and got probably the worst tasting beer I've ever had in my whole entire life, mango flavoured beer. But yeah, I'd take 7 million quid to not drink this beer. So yeah, I'd take that. I think he's an exceptional player, and if we lose him, I'll be pissed off. But like you say, it is what it is. Money talks. Right, what are we talking about now? Expectations you've written, Alby. Have our expectations been met so far this season?
Would you want to quickly go on to what you think we need?
What do I think we need? Well, we'll obviously going to need a goalkeeper, obviously. It's because I don't think either of the pair of the backups are anywhere near good enough. I mean that Ravazoli is not even good enough. I don't know what he's good for, but it's certainly not being a footballer, that's for sure. So no, I mean we need a goalkeeper. We definitely need a goalkeeper. That is really.
I think maybe at least one wing back to sort of push Harvie, and then if we lose Kioso, we'll need another one of that. But other than those two positions, I had a look at it, and I don't think we need to add anything to the squad right now. It would all the incomings would only be replacing whatever we lose in January.
Yeah, right. Let's just say we are on January the 31st, and we've got every single player that we currently have right now. I still think we need a striker. Maybe not a prolific striker, but I think somebody just Charlie Brown. We spoke about could probably benefit with a loan.
Yeah, he's definitely. Could benefit with going to either, I don't know, a lower level team. I mean, he's far too young and he's far too raw at the minute. So yeah, I mean, we could be doing with actually shipping him out somewhere to sharpen him up a bit, get a bit of game time. But apart from that, like you say, Alby, I can't really. If we manage to keep a hold of everyone, I can't really see where we need to bring anyone in. To be quite honest, if we manage to keep a hold of what we've got in the minute. I think the squad's actually all right.
I would say there would benefit with another midfielder, just based on what we've had for injuries. But I wouldn't say it's a necessity. But if we brought one in, a bit of a forward-thinking midfielder, not quite an attacking midfielder, but somebody who can get the ball and go, similar to what like McEachran does. But again, that's not a necessity. But I think it would go a long way to helping the squad depth, given the fact that the likes of Josh Martin isn't playing much. So that would be interesting. But I'm again not desperate, but it would help me out. From my point of view,
Dan, what do you reckon?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've mentioned it. We definitely need a goalkeeper. I'd say at least one wing back, but other than that, as we've sort of agreed, I would be happy enough going into the rest of the season with what we've got.
Just chatting about it before we finish up, I mean, this is just me from a purely selfish point of view. I genuinely believe that we need another goalkeeper anyway, to be quite honest, irrespective of whether Fisher leaves or whether he doesn't. So
without looking at losing anybody, we need to add a goalkeeper.
Yeah, we do.
At least one wing back, maybe a striker. But then, honestly, I'd be happy with Watters and Isa going forwards. And then if Parrott does decide to start playing better again, as he seems to be doing the last couple of games, I think we'd be all right there. Just before we move away from transfers and onto the expectations, do you remember, John, because Alby wasn't on this podcast,
all right, go on.
When I asked you at the end of the last transfer window who your best signing prediction was?
No, I'm dreading this, to be quite honest. Go on. No, I don't.
So yeah, I asked all of you, and then I'm sure I asked Alby at the time off camera, but asked him again just now. So
go on, what did I say? I'm desperate to find out what I said. Go on.
Tony thought it would be Mo Isa.
Right, okay.
I thought it would be Scott Twine.
Right, what did I say? I hate to think.
Yeah. Alby thought Josh Martin, and you thought Tenai Watson.
I like him. I really do.
Yeah.
I just like him because he's a nice bloke.
It's just as we're going into another transfer window and we're going to lose players, like we're going to gain players. I just thought it might be just quite interesting just to sort of remind ourselves of that, thinking obviously of the first half of the season. And I don't think me and you have done too badly, John, to be honest, because Watson's done all right.
Watson's done all right when he's played. Isa has massively disappointed me. He really has. I don't care what anyone says. This is from my personal point of view. I think if he is a record signing, which is what the rumour is, then I think we've been done, to be quite honest, really, because he's not lived up to expectations. He really hasn't. But, I mean, it's early days. You're hoping, I don't know. I'm just hoping he'll come better, to be quite honest. Yeah, Watson, I like him. I just like him because I think he's a nice bloke, So I think I've done all right. I don't know what kind of footballer he is, but he's got a cool haircut and I like him. So there you go. I think I've won that argument. So what can you say?
And then, Alby, I don't know if you just want to mention your sort of best signing prediction or not.
Look, I've had a nightmare there. I've had a nightmare. But I'll take you back to the summer when we signed Josh Martin. It was on paper a brilliant signing. He was Norwich City's wonder kid. Their fans loved him. The only reason he wasn't going to play games was because they got promoted to the Premier League, and a lot of them were saying if they were still in the Championship, there's a high chance that he would have had games. He's come in, and I think he's probably been a victim of the Russell Martin departure. Liam doesn't fancy him for whatever reason, and when he has played, he's not fulfilled the expectation. He's just not done enough. I think it's unfair on the kids. I don't know whether that's just me because I defend the young players in the same way that I defended Sorensen last year. I saw a lot more from Sorensen than a lot of people did. I just think he's been a victim of the change in management. But I certainly don't think it makes him a bad player. I reckon he'll leave in January and probably sign for another League One club and do fairly all right there. He'll probably go to Lincoln. Right, put that on record. He'll go to Lincoln because they sign every one of our former players. So he'll go to Lincoln and do all right there. Put that on record.
So, as I said a minute ago, speaking about expectations, how do you feel about... I'm trying to figure out what to say about how this half a season's going. From a personal point of view, I think we're about where I expected us to be, or maybe just slightly above where I thought we would be. So, given what happened just before the season kicked off, I'm happy with where we are at the minute. I really am. I think we've done all right, considering I think we're just about where we should be. That's only my own, I don't know what you guys think, but I'm happy with all right, I'd be happier if we were in the playoffs, but I'm happy with where we are at the minute. I think we've done better than I expected us to do, to be quite honest. If you take into account what happened a week before the season kicked off. So there you go.
Yeah, I'll pretty much agree with that. I thought going into the season, so before the whole managerial palaver, I was expecting top 2. I thought we were good enough. I thought we'd shown enough last year. After what's happened and after seeing Rotherham this year, I think playoffs are probably there or thereabouts. That's what we should be aiming for. That's what I think we're good enough. On our day, I think we can match anybody in this league. If we play the way we did second half at Lincoln, like some of the 4-1 wins, if we play the way we did away at Wigan, I think we can match anybody in this league. But then, as I mentioned earlier, there's those games where if teams sit back, or if we have like a really bad first half or something, we're probably not good enough to be blowing every single team out of the water. So yeah, I think sort of the 5th or 6th sort of place, like the bottom half of the playoffs, I think is probably where we should be.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. If we can get even the last playoff spot, I think I'd be happy with that. I mean, I hate to have to say this, but I don't think we're strong enough to go up to the Championship this season. But, if you can get up there, you've obviously got to do it. I mean, we went up the last time and we came straight back down. High Wycombe went up, last season and came straight back down. So, if you don't give it a shot, then, you're not going to know. But I think, like you said, Dan, if we can just scrape into the playoffs, I'd be happy with that. Anything else would be a slight failure from a personal point of view. I think if we could get the last, playoff spot, I think that would be a fair reflection on our season, to be quite honest. What do you think, Alby?
Yeah, I agree with that. My expectation under Russell Martin was that we should be aiming for playoffs. It didn't matter whether we were aiming for third or sixth. When that changed, I didn't really have time to assess where we were going to go because we only had the Bolton game at the start of the season before we got our new manager. So it wasn't like we had a transition period, so to speak. It quite literally, we started the season with Dean Lewington and Liam Manning. We discount the Bournemouth game because just given what it was fucking bananas. I would say that my expectation probably hadn't quite hindered, but that was purely because of how well Liam did when he first came in, and the results that we got were quite impressive. So let's just say if you had asked me after the first 3 games of Liam Manning's tenure, I'd be impressed. I'd be impressed and happy. And as I said, the day that Russell Martin left, I would have absolutely snapped your hand off to say we'd be in the situation that we are. So I think the expectation that I've had at the start of the season leading to now, playoffs, when we're there or thereabouts, we're not cut adrift, we're not too far behind, we've not got to make up 6 points and got 2 less games left. And do you know what I mean? We're pretty all right. What I would like to see us do by the end of the season is, given the fact that we're out of the FA Cup, just have a good go for it. We have a real good go for it. And again, what we're going to need is we're probably going to need 2 real runs of form of maybe 2 8-game stretches unbeaten and things like that to be able to maintain that, because there is a lot of teams coming into form at the right time of the season right now. And my expectation in one is probably around about where we are. I wouldn't be surprised if we finish 7th or 8th, but we do have the quality to go and get playoffs. And I'd be delighted, even if we didn't go up, I'd be delighted if this is the steps that we're making under Liam Manning is to get a playoff spot.
Yeah. It's really interesting looking at the table right now, actually. I've just got it in front of me. So as it stands right now, we're 7th. We're 5 points behind Oxford and Wycombe, who, if results stand tonight, Wycombe are losing, Oxford are winning. So if we win our game in hand, we'll be 1 point behind both of them. There's only one team in the league that's scored more goals than us, which is Rotherham at the top. But in the top 9, we've conceded the most amount of goals as well. So I think it's not a case of our defence not being good enough. I think it's just because we've made quite a few silly errors. Like you just look at the Lincoln game again. Both of those goals were avoidable. If we can just sort of get our defence just sort of, I don't know, just 1 gear higher or something consistently throughout the rest of the season, we'll win more games, we'll get more points, and we can very, very easily push into that top 6.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you've even said, Alby, about finishing 7th or 8th, when you consider what happened, I think that would be alright. Obviously, it wouldn't be great, but I mean, I could accept that, to be quite honest, because it's, I mean, let's move on, to him who we cannot mention, because that, even now, I mean, I still find it incredibly difficult to...
Can I stop you there before you go on?
Yeah, go on.
Sorry to be rude. The reason why I was actually going to ask you that, I can sense where you're going with it. There's been a lot of people saying of late that it's been and gone, he's doing well there, we're doing well, why are we still bitter about it? The reason why I wanted to speak about it is because I wanted to know from both of you guys whether you still hold an element, or if not more, of bitterness, whether you're over it, or whether we as a fan base should get over it. That's why I wanted to talk about him, because it's been long enough now where perhaps things might have settled down a little bit. Might have, I don't know.
Maybe you should go first, Dan, because I think I've got quite a lot to say about him, to be quite honest.
So just talking about sort of him leaving, how it's affected us first. Despite how negative we were all feeling as a fan base as it happened, I don't think we've missed him too much. I think Liam Sweeting has done a brilliant job in getting the right man in, getting the right team in, and sort of basically stopping the rot before it had a chance to sink in. As for my feelings on him as a person, I think it's going to be a case of whenever we come up against him, I am going to want us to absolutely batter them. Whenever I look at their results, I'm going to want them to lose. I don't want him to do well there. But having said that, when it comes to, say, as you were saying earlier, John, like sort of him wanting some of our players, so long as he puts up the cash and so long as we're sort of firm in our figure or whatever, I'm happy to let players go there so long as he pays the price that we feel that they're warranted, not just because he feels his mates with the chairman, his mates with this person, his mates with that person. I want us to be strong as a club. As fans, I think we can hate him all we want. Like Alby said it many, many times. We need a villain as a club that's not just AFC Wimbledon. And I think he's with everything that happened, he's the perfect villain for us, I think.
I have a caveat before we start, and this is going to sound really weird, with what I'm going to say in a couple of minutes' time, but I'm genuinely glad that he has gone, because I think we've done better without him. I think Leon, Fanning or whatever we're calling him, I think he's a better option than Russ, but it was the way that it happened, I mean, I'll tell you guys a story, and I've told people this, and I've said to them, don't tell anyone, because it was said in confidence, but see, to be quite honest with you, I couldn't give a fuck any longer. We interviewed him on this podcast not long after he got the job, and I asked him specifically about one of his previous clubs. I'm not going to say which club it was, but I think anyone that knows me and anyone that knows him, I'll know which club I'm talking. I asked him what it was like there. He said the club, and once again I'm going to quote, he said the club was a basket case, and I felt terrible. See now, I wouldn't trust Russell Martin to tell me it was Wednesday night, because I just don't. I don't trust him. I don't trust him at all. I think everything he said in that interview, I've gone back and listened to that interview a couple of times, and I just think what he did to us back in August, right up and even in the morning of when he left, or the day before he left, he said he was happy here and he had plans going forward, and everything he was saying, he knew that he was going to leave. That's the mark of the man. I'm fucking lost for words now. It's like Alby's just said, we need a villain, and he is a villain for us. Robbie Nielson, he just wasn't a particularly good manager, was he? He just wasn't. Russ, it was all that stuff. He was the fans' favourite. He'd come up to the cowshed. He'd do that fist pump business. He went on those other young lads' podcasts. He befriended them, Everyone thought he was brilliant, and then he turned round and did that to us. I have got nothing. I've absolutely zero respect for him, both as a man. As a football manager, I guess he's done alright, but as a person, as a man, I have nothing but vitriol for him. I cannot stand him, really. Apart from that, I think he's alright.
Hey, I was going to say what you really feel.
Well, I said it when he left. It's a strange thing, because I genuinely am glad that he's gone, and I think we've had the better deal out of him leaving. But to leave in the actual way, he didn't even come out at. Did he not just fuck off at half time or something in that Bournemouth game, or did he went down the tunnel at full time, got in the car and drove to fucking Swansea? What can you say?
Yeah.
A bloody car waiting for him to fuck off to Swansea, Fuck you, mate. I hope everything goes really bad for you in the rest of your life. I've got. Oh, I wish you'd never asked me now. I'm really upset. I wish I'd never had this last beer, because it's gone to my head. No, I wish that guy nothing but ill in his life. I'm sorry. In his professional life, I don't care about his personal life. He's a vegan. He can do it. He can have as many vegan restaurants as he likes. I won't be eating in one because I like steak, so bollocks to you. What can I say? And In fact, I like steak more now than I did before he left. I like steak specifically to spite him. So there you go. I have red meat every single night, Russell Martin. That's how much I don't like you.
Right, I'll take over. Again, as I touched on when I asked the question, the reason why I asked that was because there's been enough time for all this to die down now, and I think it comes after every game and we're not going to talk about it. We're not, because I don't want to, and none of you want to. But that song that gets sung every game, it comes up to a point when people are saying, "Why are we still going on about it? We're in a position where we're doing really well." These are people who have never been burned by football before, and it's something I've been taking the piss out of quite recently by saying everything should be rosy when we've been losing games and coming on and saying, "Hey, it was a good game of football against a good team. What's there to be worried about?" Because that's the world that a lot of people who support this club want to live in. Tottenham Hotspur fans didn't say, well, we might have lost Sol Campbell, but you know what? Who cares? It's been and gone now, and he's winning Premier Leagues. We should be happy for him. When I can help said his name in the top of my bloody head there. When Figo went to Real Madrid from Barcelona, their fans didn't go, "Oh well, he's a world class player. Why wouldn't he go and play for another world class team?" And I think he won the Champions League there and things like that. Well, that's not a problem. These are teams and these are football fans who have been burned by somebody that they formerly loved. I fell for that thing with Russell Martin, and truly, and I will never do it again. Maybe because of what had happened with Carl over the past. Maybe we were longing for a similar sort of relationship with our manager. I felt let down. Again, I kind of alluded to it on the pod when he went and we did a big rant back then. You can't help Swansea's time of approach. It wasn't him leaving that bothered me. It wasn't even the time of him leaving that bothered me. It was the complete and utter bollocks that he spouted before he left, and the Tottenham game in pre-season just a few days before, and the way that he was acting like he was fully there for the long haul. He lied. And that's why I don't particularly, I'm not particularly in a everyday lifestyle where I'm thinking, I hope this guy rots and, viva la steak and all that sort of stuff. But to have complaints to people who are still burned by it and still quite bitter about it, despite the position that we're in, is kind of wrong. It has left, thankfully, not as bad as it could have, but it could have easily left an incredibly dark cloud over this club as the season had gone on. Our season could have easily derailed. And if we had a bad season, it would have been worse. Thankfully, we've not had as bad of a season, but you can hear the majority of the fan base who go to games are over it, but haven't forgiven. There's that thing that, they might have, forgiven it or not forgotten it or whatever that the word is. The fan base haven't let that slide, and one day we'll come up against him, and maybe by that point it might have died down even more because we're doing well and they're doing shit or whatever. But generally speaking, it's evident that the majority of the fan base have a real disdain towards the guy, and I never thought it would happen because I bought into his bollocks. So I can understand that people are still singing that song, whether for the right or wrong reasons. I can understand the dislike and the disdain that a lot of people still hold on to. But does that mean that I'm not in a situation, like you said, John, where I'm in a strange kind of way? It's worked out in a quite a strangely all right way, of course, because we're doing well this season. But it could have quite easily have gone wrong, and that's why, fuck Russell Martin is basically what I want to say.
I think what's done me about the whole thing is like everyone else, like those young lads in the other podcast, that everyone that sits in the cowshed, that everyone that ever met him just thought it's just the utter betrayal of that trust, that you just think to yourself, mate, what set of morals do you live your life by when you think that's all right to do that? Really, honestly, I fell for all that fist-pumping shite. Remember that time when we played Coventry away when we were at Birmingham, Remember that when we, salvaged a draw? That was a fantastic day. Remember that? And you just think, wow, that was the last away game I was at. I guess it was the last away game, not everyone was at, it was the last away game before lockdown, and you just think, I fell for all that crap, he suckered me, that bloke. Personally, he personally betrayed me, and that's what I think what pissed me off about when he went. But like you've just said, like I said a minute ago, I think we've done better with him leaving, but it was the manner in which he left. It was the timing with, a week, before the season kicked off. All that bollocks in the run-up to that, going to Swansea, the Bournemouth game, I'm here for the long term and all that kind of crap. Fully knowing that he was going to leave. I mean, like we said earlier on in this podcast, there was actually a car, waiting outside Bournemouth to take the guy to bloody Swansea, full time. That is a mark of the guy. I mean, I wish him nothing better in his professional life. I'm just sorry, I've just got no time for the guy whatsoever. But I am ultimately glad that he's gone. I really am. So there you go. What can you say? Nothing apart from fuck off and don't come back. And if you do come back, I hope we beat you 6-0. So there you go.
I'm just digesting what I've just heard from both of you.
I mean, it is what it is. I mean, there's no loyalty in football, but it was just, I think it was the timing of when he went. It was the whole business of, in the run up to the Bournemouth game, how he was saying he was here for the long term and, he had plans and all that, fully well knowing that he was going to leave. But, he left. They're a bigger club than us. It's a bigger league. They're better financed than us. But he should have been a bit more upfront about what he was going to do, to be quite honest. I mean, it was a difficult gig to turn down. I mean, we're sitting here, talking into a computer on a Wednesday night, thinking, I mean, we don't know. I mean, if someone offers you a better gig, ultimately you're going to take it, but you're hoping to yourself that you would be a bit more honourable. I think if he had been a bit more honourable at doing it, then I would have accepted it. But it was certainly the timing of when he did it, with a week to go before the season kicked off, and it was all this shite about I'm here, I mean, I've said it before, I'm sick of talking about him, just fuck off and good riddance, mate.
Just my closing point on that, for anybody who might be listening to this podcast and only tuned in towards the end, the reason why I wanted to mention this is, as I touched on earlier, is there's been enough time and a lot of people don't quite understand why certain people haven't digested it yet. And I think at this stage of the season, we're now halfway into the season and we're doing better than a lot of people would have thought of. And we've spoken about our mid-season expectations going forward and how well we've done. I think it was a good time to bring it up again for one last time. We'll probably not talk about it again. But of course, the first time that we spoke about it, we didn't even do a build-up to the season because of what had happened with the departure. This is a good time to sort of reflect on what had happened, perhaps with a bit of a lighter heads, and it didn't quite work out that way because myself and Jers went a bit on a tangent. But it might be good to put it to bed. We'll still not appreciate him, and he'll always be a snake. But maybe it is time for some people, not me, but some people to drop it a little bit, because we're doing pretty well, and I think Liam deserves a lot of credit for how well he's done coming into this team and keeping the momentum going from what we expected in pre-season under that fucking Judas.
Right, let's wrap this one up because we have done 1 hour and 21 minutes. You have written, Alby, at the end of your little thing you have sent us, COVID bollocks and postponement. Do you want to quickly talk about the COVID protocols, or are we happy with the way things are going with that? Because what I'm thinking that there are from, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I don't subscribe to that shite, but I would say there are certainly some clubs that are playing on that, if you ask me, that are having games postponed because A, they don't think that they can beat the teams they're going to play against, or B, they've got so many injuries that, but that's just me. I don't know what you guys think about that.
You are sounding, John, like a certain League One's media team with a letter that they've sent to the...
I've seen that letter. Nice letter, isn't it?
You're sounding a lot like them at the moment.
What they have said is, and they have said that they have put, protocols in, and that, they're asking, all their players to sacrifice Christmas, and I'm thinking to myself, Do you genuinely believe that you are the only team in this league that have asked players to sacrifice their Christmas holidays? They've not, but they're... I mean, the game we should have been at tonight, we said it before we started recording, I'm glad it's off, because I'm just think, I don't want to go to football. Like, I'd much rather sit in here and drink beer and talk into a computer screen. But I would be thinking that squads should be big enough for that to go ahead. We said it earlier on here. We had to play Oxford with a depleted squad, and that was COVID related, but we put a team out. If you've got a squad, you should have a squad that's big enough, even if you're putting, not kids out, but if you're putting like second string, like first teamers out. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, this COVID thing, I'm just fucking done with it. I don't know what to say any longer about it. You know, it's just when you think you're coming out the other end of it, it comes and slaps you in the face again. But that is what it is. I mean, what can you say? You know, I don't know what you guys think about my ridiculous, conspiracy theories, but there you go. What can you say? You know,
I don't think that the Gillingham game will be on, because we've already mentioned on the podcast a few weeks ago that Gillingham are one of those teams. They've only got a small squad, and the majority of their players do seem to be injured. And they themselves postponed their Boxing Day game. I don't know if it was the same for them, like just them today, but it wouldn't surprise me if Gillingham call Saturday off. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's as easy as just saying teams don't feel like they can put a good enough squad out, so they're just going to postpone it. Like, there are rules that they have to subscribe to, and I'm sure if they don't have enough members of their registered squad, then they have a right to postpone it, I guess, because it's the same with international call-ups. Like, we've mentioned that club right into the EFL sort of complaining. They're the ones that have postponed games for international fixtures when they've basically got a bunch of under threes that have gone off to New Zealand or somewhere in Europe or whatever. They've just had the right amount of players that are unavailable, so then they can postpone games. So I don't know. It's a shame that we couldn't postpone the Oxford one, I guess, because we had quite a few players out. But if we had the right number of squad players that were still there, then we had no excuse to not play the game, I guess.
Going back to that team, that club you've just mentioned that wrote that letter, they were quite happy to postpone a game against us because they had a goalkeeper that was going to go and sit on the bench for New Zealand. So, I mean, they can't have it both ways, can they, really? To be quite honest with you. What can you say?
And in all fairness, I don't wish the disease on anybody. Like, I've seen firsthand sort of how devastating that could be. But if it does come to a case where they're forced to sort of postpone games because of a certain number of positive cases, it will be very, very interesting to see how they try and spin that after what they've just tried to do.
Yeah, that's interesting, actually. If they've come to a point where they have to perhaps want a game off because of possible cases in their camp, and let's hope that doesn't happen just for the players and staff's health. But if that were to happen, then it'd be interesting to see, as you said, how would they spin it, given, and the openness of the letter as well. The openness of the letter surprised me. And to be fair, I don't necessarily disagree with the sentiment of what they're getting at. I do think that it can be a sucker punch for a lot of teams who are doing their best to do it. But I also think, do you not think these clubs have protocols? Do you not think that, the virus will just get people? It's nobody's fault. Nobody actively wants the thing. I've had it and it was absolutely dreadful. My mum had it and it was devastating for the whole family. We've all known people who have had it and the effects it has had, and we've probably all had it ourselves. Nobody wants it. Nobody would risk saying, oh, you know what, I'm absolutely going to get it here. Let's purposely get it to get games called off and that sort of rubbish. So there is that sense of, I don't really know what they're getting at, but I do understand the frustration from a team like them. There were two big money spinners there, having two big teams come into their grounds at a time where they'll probably make a lot of money. And it's now going to be rescheduled for Tuesday nights where they'll get lesser figure in. So I can understand the frustration of that. But this is just the time we're in. COVID is unfair. COVID is absolutely unfair, and nobody wins because of COVID. there's no point whinging about it, because ultimately the most important thing in life at the minute is the fact that we're alive, and the fact that we're getting to play and watch football at the minute it's massive to us. So look, a couple of games have been postponed, but just get the fuck on with it, lads. Come on.
Yeah, it could be worse. It could be in Scotland. I mean, everyone who's on this podcast right now, me, Dan and Alby, we can all name individuals who have got it or who have just got over it right now. So if AFC Wimbledon don't have an outbreak in it, I will be amazed, I really will. That's why I think that the letter they signed or they wrote was a mistake, because they named two specific clubs, and you think to yourself, are those two specific clubs, that were named in that letter, are they going to forget that? I would like to think not, but like you say, we live in unprecedented times. We've been saying this for nearly 2 years now, so I mean, what can you say? I am wholeheartedly, I've not had it. I'm super careful at work, and when you consider what I do for a living, there's me, my whole company, and that's including office staff, there's only me and one other young fella that have not had it, so I don't want to get it, I just don't, so I'm super careful. But if Wimbledon don't have an outbreak of it, I will be astonished, especially living where they do. London's just the epicentre of this Omicron business, isn't it, so you're thinking to yourself, I don't know where their players live, but if they don't get it, I'll be astonished, so that is what it is. Right, if Saturday does go ahead, which, let's be honest, it's not looking likely at the minute, how do you think we'll do against them?
Batter them.
Yeah, I really think we will.
Batter them, I think.
They're struggling, aren't they, at the minute? They really are.
Half, very, very well, and then the second half will be shit, and we'll only win 1-0.
I'm just having a look at their past results. Bearing in mind they've not played for about 3 weeks. They've lost... How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've lost their last 6.
Blimey.
8, 9, 10, 11. They've not won in 12.
Jesus.
That's them.
So yeah, if we're not winning, then all of our talk about playoffs and Liam Manning doing well, that is just it's completely gone, and we're shit.
Yeah, you just think that is they've not won in 12. I tell you when they will win, on the unlucky 13th. So I don't know. I don't like Steve Evans. I don't think he's. He's a buffoon, that guy, isn't he? He's like a figure of fun to me, that guy. We've said it on this podcast before. How on earth that guy keeps getting gigs as a football manager is beyond me, but there you go. It is what it is. He's a football manager, and I'm, once again sat here talking into a computer screen. But if it is on, which I'm going 50-50 at the minute. We don't have it in our score at the minute, do we? We seem to be quite clear with it, but it comes on fairly quickly, doesn't it, this Omicron business? So, did they call off their last games, or were they called off by the opposition?
They called off Boxing Day, and they didn't play the week before that as well. So I've without looking, I presume that was them as well. But as I've said before, they've mentioned, their fans have mentioned time and time again, they don't have enough players. All of their players are injured. Steve Evans wants to leave because he's not getting the support from the chairman and all of that. So he's not happy. Nobody's happy down in Gillingham, which having been there, I can understand.
Yeah, I can understand why. I'm not particularly happy myself every time I've been. Fucking hell. Last place you want to go in.
But yeah, it's if it's called off, I highly doubt it will be down to us.
How would you feel about it being called off personally? Because I would be irritated if it's called off. Because I would really like to go. I really would. I would. I need a day out, to be quite honest, and that would be an alright day. I like going to the stadium. I've been wearing a mask at the stadium, even. I've never not worn one, to be quite honest. Even sitting in the stands, I wear one like a fucking idiot. But I'd be more than happy to go to Lewington's bar and have a couple of pints. I just would be. The this has been an alright holiday for me, because basically I've not done much. I've done a lot of decorating. I went to my sister-in-law's, we went to the pantomime. It's been alright. I'd be more than happy to go to the stadium, I really would, but I'll be irritated if that game's called off, I really will. But sitting here on a Wednesday night before the Saturday, I am thinking that it's not going to go ahead, to be quite honest with you. I'd be surprised if it does, but it is, I mean, stranger things have happened, you know. You don't know, do you? I mean, I'm hoping this Omicron's coming to a bit of a peak, you know, but I mean, I'm not an epidemiologist, what can you say, you know? Just when you think you're getting through this thing, it comes up and kicks you in the arse again, doesn't it? So, I don't know. I don't know, what can you say, you know? What can you say? You know, it is what it is.
It's been a long episode.
Yeah, I mean, I'm off. I can spend all day tomorrow editing this. Keep going. We've done an hour and 35 minutes so far. This is by far and away our longest episode.
I think I'd be happier if it went ahead than I was feeling about tonight, mainly because it's a Saturday. I guess, I don't know. Alby's just showing us Chelsea have scored.
Have they scored? What's the score? What's the score, Alby?
Yeah, and because I probably think that we'd be beating Gillingham more than we would Cheltenham, but I don't know. It's a weird one because it's coming up to.
Sorry, Dan. For 3 points' sake, and as well in the busy festive period, so I've had 2 games in 7 days, and still be there or thereabouts. So, and hopefully get 6 points would be brilliant. So for that thing, that'd be great. But who knows?
I think it'd be good if it did go ahead for the players as well, because hopefully they're still sort of bouncing on the momentum from Lincoln.
Yeah.
But then if we don't have another game for like a week, or when it is AFC next Tuesday, or is that the week after? I don't know. I can't remember when that is. But if we don't have another game for a week, so if we go 2 weeks without a game, then that might die down. So maybe for a thing of momentum, like we need a game to go ahead. But then again, Gillingham might sort of see that and think, okay, it might be a good time to have another positive case, or this or that, or we've got too many injuries, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah. For me, the main thing about all these games being called off, it's making me not plan away games as well. Because 2 of the games that I had penciled in at the start of the season were Accrington and Portsmouth, which that's the 8th and the 15th of January. But if games are getting called off sort of like the day before, I'm not
any away games until there is some sort of balance as to knowing that things are going to be a bit more straightforward. I've always thought it's generally in and around. I liken it in a weird way to the weather. There's generally a booking trains when you know that it's going to snow. So I normally lay off it and find other modes of transport. I'll be doing that the same with this. If I can't go to a game, I'm not risking spending train money on a game that could be cool. I look at like Hull the other day, for example. I think it was Hull who had a game postponed an hour and a half or 2 hours before kickoff. It's like, what a fucking life to live that is. We're grateful that we've got the football, and of course, health is more important. But these organisations that are running these fixtures have no clue about the importance of what it means to a fan and financially what it takes. I'm loving the chance to go to home games, but ultimately at the minute, if I'm having to fork out 70 quid for a train for a game that I might not be able to go to because of the uncertainty, then I'm sorry, I can't do that. Can't.
Speaking from a dispassionate point of view, perhaps it would be an ideal situation, to do what they've done in Scotland, which is just, call a halt to the season for 3 weeks. But, I mean, do you think Omicron will be gone in 3 weeks' time? No, it won't be, will it? Scotland can bring their winter break, forward by a week, but it's not going to make any difference ultimately, is it? So they're going to have some kind of protocol where the season is halted for a couple of weeks, or they're just going to have to force teams to play, to be quite honest, because, I mean, the backlog fixture must be astronomical, mustn't it? There just must be, the fixture guys must be getting their calendar out and thinking, we could have one there on a Monday, another one on a Wednesday. I mean, you just think...
It's worth mentioning as we wrap the podcast up that currently Wycombe are losing 1-0 away to Ipswich.
That's good.
With 10 minutes to go, and in a weird sense, although we won't like to admit it, Carl Robinson is currently beating AFC Wimbledon 3-0.
Oh, he isn't, is he? Really? I hope it's away. Oh, it won't be away, will it, obviously? Oh, well, that's good news.
So, but where that leaves us, having not played tonight, is we are 7th in the table on 38 points. Wycombe have dropped down to 6th as of current. They are on 42 points, having played 23. We are a place below them in 7th on 38 points, having played 22. So it's not looking too bad for us at the minute.
Right. This being our longest podcast by some considerable distance, I am now winding it up. We have done 1 hour and 40 minutes. Still, it's been, we've had 3 weeks without a podcast, so, think yourself lucky, fellas. Right, I would like to wrap this one up by wishing all our listeners an extremely happy new year when it comes, and I hope next year is better than this one. But it can only get better, can't it, fellas? Because it couldn't get any worse than the last couple of years, could it, honestly? Let's be honest.
Oh, don't jinx it.
Right, so hopefully we will see you on Saturday. If you do see me on Saturday, I'm fully open to people buying me beers at that Cowshed Bar. Not Cowshed Bar, I'm not going in there. Don't look for me in there, I won't be in there. I'll be in Lewington's if I'm anywhere. So, once again, I'd like to wish everyone a very happy new year, and hopefully next year goes better than this one. And Dan is about to say more or less the same thing.
More or less the same thing.
And what are you saying, Alby?
The same thing, more or less.
Right. If you listen right to the end of this, you might find that the music is a bit different, because every year we like to have a bit of a different music at the end. We couldn't have Tony's mate singing his Oasis tribute act last week because we didn't do a Christmas pod, but we will have a bit of a ukulele New Year song at the end, so I'm about to say it and then we'll see you next week. So Happy New Year everyone, and we'll be back hopefully in the new year. Bye.
Bye.
I've just come down from the Isle of Skye. I'm nobody big and I'm up the Shire. Lassie shout when I go by. Down where's your cruisers? Let the wind blow high, let the wind blow low. Through the streets of my kilt I'll go. All the lassies say, hello! Donald, where's your cruisers? That lassie took me to the ball, and it was the grey in the hall. As I feared that I would fall, but I had me on my cruisers. Let the wind blow high, let the wind blow low. Through the streets of my kilt I'll go. All the lassies say, hello! Donald, where's your cruisers? Now I went down to London town and had some fun on the underground. The ladies turned their heads around, saying, Donald, where are you from? Let the wind blow high, let the wind blow low. Through the streets of my kilt I'll go. All the lassies say, hello! Donald, where's your cruisers? To wear the kilt is my delight. It's not wrong, I know it's right. The Highlanders would get afraid if they saw me in the cruisers. Let the wind blow high, let the wind blow low. Through the streets of my kilt I'll go. All the lassies say, hello! Donald, where's your cruisers? The lassies want me, everyone. Well, let them catch me if they can. Can they catch a Highland man? I don't wear the cruisers. Let the wind blow high, let the wind blow low. Through the streets of my kilt I'll go. All the lassies say, hello! Donald, where's your cruisers? I've just come down from the Isle of Skye. I'm nobody big and I'm off with shy. Lassies shout when I go by. Hey, Donald, where's your cruisers? Let the wind blow high, let the wind blow low. Through the streets of my kilt I'll go. All the lassies say, hello! Donald, where's your cruisers? Donald, where's your cruisers? Donald, where's your cruisers?